The mythical beginnings, Romulus and Remus. The story of Rome begins in the midst of legend, where myth and divine intervention intertwine with mortal ambition. Long before Rome became the eternal city, its origins were tied to a tale of gods, kings, betrayal, and destiny. At the center of this tale were the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, whose extraordinary lives and tragic fates set the stage for the birth of one of history's greatest civilizations. The twins' mother, Rhea Silvia, was the daughter of Numitor, the rightful king of Alba Longa, a city founded by the descendants of Aeneas, the Trojan hero. Numitor's brother, Amulius, seized the throne in a violent coup, forcing Numitor into exile. To secure his position and eliminate any threat to his rule, Amulius decreed that Rhea Silvia must serve as a Vestal Virgin, a priestess bound by a sacred vow of chastity. By doing so, he believed he had extinguished any hope of Numitor's bloodline continuing. However, the will of the gods cannot be so easily thwarted. According to legend, Mars, the god of war, visited Rhea Silvia in her solitude. Whether through divine love or force remains a mystery, but their union resulted in the birth of twin sons, Romulus and Remus. The arrival of the twins was a direct challenge to Amulius's power, and he wasted no time in plotting their demise. Amulius ordered the infants to be cast into the Tiber River, leaving them to the mercy of the elements. It was a cruel act, but even as the basket carrying the twins was placed into the water, the gods seemed to intervene. The river, swollen but gentle, carried the basket safely downstream. It came to rest at the base of a fig tree on the Palatine Hill, a site destined to become the heart of Rome. Here in this wilderness, a she-wolf discovered the crying infants. Instead of devouring them, the wolf, perhaps guided by divine instinct, suckled the boys and provided them with warmth and protection. This miraculous event became one of the most iconic symbols of Roman mythology, immortalized in countless works of art and literature. The twins' extraordinary survival continued when a shepherd named Faustulus stumbled upon them. Recognizing the divine nature of their rescue, Faustulus and his wife, Acca Larentia, took the boys into their home and raised them as their own. Under their care, Romulus and Remus grew into strong, fearless young men, deeply connected to the land where they were found. They quickly became leaders among the local youth, renowned for their courage, intelligence, and unyielding sense of justice. Despite their humble upbringing, the twins could not escape their royal lineage. When they learned of their true parentage in the tyranny of Amulius, they vowed to restore their grandfather Numitor to the throne of Alba Longa. Gathering a band of loyal followers, they launched a daring rebellion. The twins proved to be natural warriors and tacticians, leading their forces to victory in overthrowing the usurper. With Amulius deposed, Numitor was reinstated as king, and justice was served. Yet the twins were not content to remain in Alba Longa. Their ambitions stretched beyond their grandfather's city. They longed to create a new city of their own, a place that would bear their mark and embody their vision of greatness. Returning to the site of their miraculous rescue, they chose the banks of the Tiber River as the location for their new settlement. However, even the bond of brotherhood could not prevent conflict. Romulus and Remus disagreed over where to build their city. Romulus favored the Palatine Hill, while Remus preferred the Aventine. Their rivalry intensified as they sought signs from the gods to validate their choices. According to the legend, Remus was the first to see an omen, 6 vultures circling the Aventine. Shortly afterward, Romulus claimed to have seen 12 vultures over the Palatine. The dispute escalated, with each brother interpreting the omens in his favor. Remus argued that his vision came first, signifying divine approval, while Romulus insisted that the greater number of vultures affirmed his choice. What began as a disagreement over location quickly turned into a struggle for supremacy. In their final confrontation, ambition and pride overwhelmed familial loyalty. The details of what transpired are murky, but the outcome was devastating. Romulus struck down his brother, killing him in a fit of rage. Some versions of the tale suggest that Remus mocked Romulus by leaping over the walls of the new city, taunting their inadequacy. Enraged by the insult, Romulus delivered the fatal blow. The death of Remus cast a shadow over the founding of the city, but it also solidified Romulus's role as its sole leader. Naming the city Rome after himself, Romulus declared its independence and began the work of building a society that would endure. From its earliest days, Rome was a sanctuary for the ambitious, the desperate, and the outcast. Romulus opened its gates to fugitives, exiles, and wanderers, offering them a place to start anew. This policy of inclusion, though born of necessity, became a defining characteristic of Rome's identity. It was a city where anyone, regardless of their origins, could rise to greatness through strength and determination. Despite its growing population, Rome faced a significant challenge: the lack of women. Without wives, the city's future was uncertain. Romulus devised a bold and controversial plan to address this problem. He invited the neighboring Sabines to a grand festival, offering food, games, and entertainment. As the festivities reached their peak, the Romans executed their plan, seizing the Sabine women and carrying them back to Rome as their wives. This event, known as the Rape of the Sabine Women, was both a calculated act of survival and a stark example of the ruthlessness that would come to define Roman strategy. While it initially provoked outrage and conflict, it ultimately led to reconciliation. The Sabine women, persuaded by Romulus's promises of honor and prosperity, chose to stay in Rome. Over time, the Sabines and Romans united, forging a powerful alliance that strengthened the young city. Romulus's reign was marked by ambition, innovation, and resilience. He established the Senate, a council of elders who advised him and helped govern the city. He organized Rome's first military forces, laying the foundation for the disciplined legions that would one day conquer vast territories. Under his leadership, Rome grew from a small settlement into a formidable power. The end of Romulus's life is as mysterious as its beginning. Some say he disappeared during a violent storm, ascending to the heavens to become the god Quirinus. Others claim he was assassinated by jealous senators who feared his growing power. Regardless of the truth, Romulus's legacy endured. He was remembered as the founder and first king of Rome, a symbol of its strength, ambition, and adaptability. The story of Romulus and Remus is more than a myth. It is a reflection of Rome itself. From its divine origins to its bloody conflicts, the city's foundation was shaped by the same qualities that would define its history: resilience, ambition, and the ability to turn adversity into opportunity. These traits, forged in the fires of legend, would carry Rome from its humble beginnings to the heights of empire. The Roman kingdom and early growth, delving deeper into the reigns of the seven kings, their individual contributions, and the dramatic events leading to the end of the monarchy. After Romulus founded Rome and ruled as its first king, 6 more monarchs followed him, each leaving their mark on the fledgling city. The Roman kingdom from 753–509 BCE was a period of transformation, where the small settlement of outcasts and adventurers began to grow into a state with institutions, traditions, and ambitions that would endure for centuries. These kings, blending myth and history, set the stage for the rise of the Republic and eventually the Empire. After Romulus's mysterious death or ascension, the Romans sought a ruler who could unite them through peace and piety rather than war and conquest. Their choice was Numa Pompilius, a Sabine of great wisdom and reverence for the gods. Where Romulus had been a warrior, Numa was a statesman and a spiritual leader, embodying balance and justice. Numa's reign, according to tradition, lasted 43 years and was characterized by profound religious and legal reform. Recognizing that Rome needed more than military strength, Numa established institutions that would provide moral guidance and cultural cohesion. Among his most enduring contributions were the Vestal Virgins priestesses dedicated to the goddess Vesta, who tended the sacred fire that symbolized Rome's eternal spirit. He also founded the Temple of Janus, whose open or closed doors would signify war or peace, a tradition that endured for centuries. Numa introduced many festivals and rituals, ensuring the people's loyalty to the gods and fostering a sense of shared identity. His reign was largely peaceful, a time when Rome consolidated its position and developed a cultural and religious foundation that would sustain it through future trials. Where Numa had focused on peace, his successor, Tullus Hostilius, embraced war. King Servio Tullio believed that military strength and expansion were essential to Rome's survival. Under his leadership, Rome waged successful campaigns against its neighbors, including the destruction of Alba Longa, the very city where Romulus and Remus had been born. One of the most famous episodes of Tullus's reign was the Wam duel between the Horatii and the Curiatii, two sets of triplets chosen to represent Rome and Alba Longa in single combat. This dramatic contest ended with the Romans' victory, securing their dominance. King Servio Tullio's reign was not without controversy. His aggressive policies sometimes alienated allies, and his disregard for religious traditions was said to have angered the gods. According to legend, he met his end when lightning struck his house, a divine punishment for his impiety. Tullus Hostilius was succeeded by Ancus Marcius, a king who sought to combine the strengths of his predecessors. A grandson of Numa Pompilius, Ancus valued religion and diplomacy, but also recognized the importance of military might. He expanded Rome's territory through conquest, but focused much of his reign on infrastructure and trade. Ancus is credited with establishing Rome's first port at Ostia, at the mouth of the Tiber River. This port became a vital hub for commerce, connecting Rome to Mediterranean trade routes and ensuring its economic growth. He also built the Mos Pons Sublicius, the first wooden bridge over the Tiber, symbolizing Rome's ability to connect and control the surrounding region. Under Ancus, Rome continued to grow, blending its cultural and religious traditions with practical innovations. His reign helped lay the groundwork for Rome's emergence as a regional power, respected by allies and feared by enemies. The reign of the Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, Rome's fifth king, marked the beginning of significant Etruscan influence on Roman culture. Tarquinius, originally an Etruscan nobleman, rose to power through ambition and cunning, marrying into Roman society and eventually seizing the throne. Tarquinius Priscus was a visionary who transformed Rome's infrastructure and aesthetics. Among his most notable achievements was the construction of the wished Circus Maximus, a massive arena that hosted chariot races and public spectacles. He also began the construction of the Cloaca Maxima, an elaborate sewer system that drained the city's marshes and improved sanitation. These projects not only enhanced the city's functionality, but also symbolized its growing sophistication and power. Tarquinius's reign saw the introduction of Etruscan religious practices and artistic styles, which enriched Roman culture. His ambitious building programs and military campaigns expanded Rome's influence, but his rise to power and methods of rule were not without controversy, setting the stage for future unrest. Tarquinius Priscus was succeeded by Servius Tullius, one of Rome's most enigmatic and influential kings. According to legend, Servius was born a slave, but rose to prominence due to his intelligence and valor. He became king through the favor of Tarquinius's widow, Tanaquil, and his reign was marked by sweeping reforms that reshaped Roman society. Servius introduced the census, a revolutionary system that classified citizens based on their wealth and military capability. This organization divided the population into classes and centuries, forming the basis of Rome's military and political structure. The wealthiest citizens were expected to provide the most resources for Rome's defense, while the poorest were exempt from heavy military burdens. Servius's reforms also included the expansion of Rome's boundaries. He built the Servian Wall, a fortification that protected the city and symbolized its growing power. His policies promoted inclusion, granting certain rights to Rome's lower classes and fostering loyalty among its allies. However, Servius's rise from humble origins and his populist reforms made him many enemies among the elite. His eventual downfall came at the hands of his own family. His ambitious son-in-law, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, conspired against him, seizing the throne in a coup and murdering Servius in the process. Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, known as Tarquin the Proud, was the last king of Rome. His reign epitomized arrogance, cruelty, and the abuse of power. Tarquin ruled with an iron fist, bypassing the Senate and governing through fear and intimidation. Under his rule, Rome continued to grow in wealth and power, but the king's methods alienated both the nobility and the common people. His most infamous act was the construction of the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, a project that symbolized Rome's ambitions but also drained its resources. The final blow to the monarchy came with the tragic story of Lucretia, a noblewoman of great virtue. Tarquin's son, Sextus Tarquinius, assaulted her, and her subsequent suicide became a symbol of tyranny and injustice. Outraged by this atrocity, the Roman people, led by Lucius Junius Brutus, rose in rebellion. In 509 BCE, Tarquinius Superbus was overthrown, marking the end of the Roman kingdom. The monarchy was abolished, and the Roman Republic was born, a government built on the principles of shared power and resistance to tyranny. The Roman kingdom was a period of foundational growth, where Rome evolved from a small settlement into a thriving city-state. The seven kings, with their diverse qualities and ambitions, contributed to Rome's cultural, religious, and political identity. From the piety of Numa to the reforms of Servius and the tyranny of Tarquin, their legacies shaped the values and institutions that would define Rome's future. The fall of the monarchy was not merely the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new era. The people of Rome, scarred by the abuses of kingship, vowed never to be ruled by a single individual again. This commitment to collective governance laid the foundation for the Republic, a system that would test Rome's resilience and adaptability as it rose to dominate the ancient world. Here's an expanded version of Demars Chapter 3, The Birth of the Roman Republic, providing a more detailed account of its foundation, internal struggles, and the early expansion of Rome. The fall of the Roman kingdom in 509 BCE marked a pivotal moment in Rome's history. The monarchy's collapse was driven by the people's discontent with the tyranny of King Tarquinius Superbus, whose abuse of power had alienated both the patrician aristocracy and the common plebeians. In its place, the Romans established a new form of government, the Republic, Res Publica, or public affair. This radical system of governance sought to ensure that no single individual could dominate the state, as the kings once had. The Republic was an experiment in shared power and a balance of competing interests. At its core were the consuls, two magistrates elected annually by the citizens. The consuls held executive authority, commanded the army, and presided over the Senate and assemblies. By limiting their term to 1 year and requiring them to govern jointly, the Romans sought to prevent the rise of another tyrant. However, this was only the beginning of a complex and evolving political system. Beneath the consuls was the Senate, a body composed of Rome's aristocratic elite. Though initially an advisory council, the Senate quickly became the Republic's most powerful institution, controlling finances, foreign policy, and the appointment of military commanders. Alongside the Senate were the popular assemblies, where Roman citizens could vote on laws, elect officials, and make decisions about war and peace. This intricate system of checks and balances reflected the Romans' deep mistrust of concentrated power, a legacy of their experiences under the monarchy. Despite the Republic's innovative design, its early years were far from harmonious. The new government was dominated by the patricians, Rome's hereditary aristocracy, who controlled most of the land, wealth, and political power. In contrast, the plebeians, the common citizens who made up the majority of the population, were largely excluded from decision-making. This imbalance led to a centuries-long conflict known as the struggle of the orders. The plebeians' grievances were manifold. They bore the brunt of military service, often fighting and dying in wars waged for the benefit of the patrician elite. Many plebeian farmers returned from campaigns to find their lands ruined or seized by creditors, leaving them impoverished and at the mercy of powerful aristocrats. To make matters worse, plebeians had little recourse in the courts, as the laws were unwritten and interpreted exclusively by patrician judges. In response, the plebeians began to demand greater political representation and protection from abuse. Their struggle for equality was marked by a series of dramatic confrontations. In 494 BCE, during a period of crisis, the plebeians staged the first secession of the plebs, withdrawing en masse to a hill outside the city and refusing to serve in the army. This act of collective defiance forced the patricians to negotiate. As a result, the plebeians secured the creation of the tribunes of the plebs officials elected to protect their interests. The tribunes had the power to veto legislation and decisions that they deemed harmful to the plebeians, providing a critical check on patrician dominance. Over time, the plebeians continued to press for reforms, gradually winning access to political offices and equal rights under the law. One of the most significant victories came in 451–450 BCE with the codification of the 12 Tables. This was Rome's first written legal code, inscribed on bronze tablets and displayed in the Forum for all to see. The 12 tables ensured greater transparency and fairness in the legal system, laying the foundation for Rome's later achievements in law and governance. The struggle of the orders was not merely a political conflict, it was a defining aspect of Roman identity. The plebeians' persistent demands for justice and inclusion demonstrated the Republic's capacity for adaptation and compromise. By addressing internal divisions, Rome became a more cohesive and resilient society, capable of meeting the challenges of an increasingly complex world. While the Republic was grappling with internal strife, it also faced constant threats from neighboring tribes and cities. The early Republic was surrounded by hostile forces, including the Etruscans to the north, the Volsci and Aequi to the east, and the Samnites to the south. To survive, Rome relied on its military ingenuity and determination. The Roman army of the early Republic was composed of citizen soldiers who fought not for pay, but out of a sense of duty to their community. Military service was both a privilege and an obligation, tied to property ownership and political rights. This citizen-based force was organized into legions, which were flexible and adaptable compared to the rigid phalanxes used by many of Rome's rivals. Rome's military success was not solely due to its soldiers' discipline and courage. It was also a result of its innovative diplomacy. Conquered peoples were often offered a path to integration through the granting of citizenship or allied status. Full citizenship provided the benefits of Roman law and protection, while allied status required military support in exchange for autonomy in local affairs. This policy of inclusion fostered loyalty and unity, transforming former enemies into partners in Rome's expansion. One of the defining conflicts of this period was the Battle of Lake Regillus in 496 BCE, where Rome defeated the Latin League, a coalition of neighboring cities. Following this victory, Rome established the Latin League Treaty, a diplomatic arrangement that secured the loyalty of its Latin allies while asserting Roman leadership. Another key moment came in the Samnite Wars, 343 to 290 BCE, a series of brutal conflicts with the powerful Samnite tribes of central Italy. These wars tested Rome's resolve and adaptability, as the Samnites were formidable opponents skilled in guerrilla warfare. Despite setbacks, Rome emerged victorious, securing control over much of the Italian peninsula. And as Rome's territory expanded, so did its need for infrastructure to support its growing population and military ambitions. The early Republic invested heavily in practical projects that facilitated trade, communication, and defense. One of the most famous achievements of this period was the construction of the Via Appia in 312 BCE, a road that connected Rome to the southern city of Capua. Known as the Queen of Roads, the Via Appia was a marvel of engineering, enabling the rapid movement of troops and goods. Roads like this would become the backbone of Rome's dominance, binding its vast territories together. Rome also built its first aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, to bring fresh water into the city. These projects not only improved the quality of life for Roman citizens, but also demonstrated the Republic's commitment to public works as a means of fostering unity and prosperity. By the end of the Republic's early years, Rome had established itself as the dominant power in Italy. This transformation was the result of a combination of military conquest, strategic alliances, and the incorporation of diverse peoples into the Roman system. The Republic's success was not without sacrifices. Wars and expansion brought hardship to many, especially the plebeian farmers who formed the backbone of the army. Yet the Republic's ability to adapt and evolve, both in its internal governance and its external policies, ensured its survival and growth. Rome's dominance in Italy was not the culmination of its ambitions, but the foundation for greater endeavors. The Republic's resilience, forged in the struggles of its early years, prepared it to confront new challenges and opportunities as it expanded beyond the peninsula. With a system of governance that balanced power among competing interests and a military tradition of discipline and innovation, Rome was poised to become a force unlike any the world had ever seen. Here's an expanded version of providing a detailed narrative of Rome's military, political, and social challenges during its rise to Mediterranean dominance. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome's ambitions had outgrown the confines of the Italian peninsula. With the consolidation of Italy under Roman control following the Samnite Wars and the Pyrrhic Wars, Rome turned its attention to the Mediterranean, where opportunities and challenges awaited. This period of expansion brought Rome into direct conflict with Carthage, one of the wealthiest and most powerful cities of the ancient world. The resulting Punic Wars, 264–146 BCE, a series of three brutal and transformative conflicts, would define Rome's rise as a superpower. The First Punic War began as a struggle for control over Sicily, a strategically important island that lay between Rome and Carthage. Carthage, a maritime powerhouse with a strong navy and extensive trade networks, had long dominated the Western Mediterranean. Rome, by contrast, was a land-based power with little experience in naval warfare. Despite this disadvantage, Rome entered the war determined to challenge Carthaginian dominance. The early stages of the conflict saw Rome and Carthage vying for control over key cities in Sicily, including Messana and Syracuse. Rome quickly realized that to compete with Carthage, it needed a navy. In an impressive display of adaptability, the Romans built a fleet from scratch, using a captured Carthaginian ship as a model. They also developed an innovative boarding device called the corvus, or crow, which allowed Roman soldiers to board enemy ships and engage in hand-to-hand combat. This tactic played to Rome's strengths as a land-based military power and neutralized Carthage's superiority at sea. Rome's persistence paid off. Despite suffering numerous defeats and setbacks, including the loss of fleets to storms and Carthaginian counterattacks, Rome achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of the Agates Islands in 241 BCE. This victory forced Carthage to sue for peace, ceding Sicily to Rome and marking the Republic's first major territorial acquisition outside Italy. Sicily became Rome's first province, setting a precedent for the administration of conquered lands. If the First Punic War established Rome as a naval power, the Second Punic War tested the Republic's resilience like never before. This conflict, sparked by Carthaginian expansion in Spain, is best remembered for the exploits of Hannibal Barca, one of history's greatest military commanders. Hannibal's bold strategy was to take the fight directly to Rome. In 218 BCE, he led a massive army, including war elephants, on a perilous journey from Spain across the Alps into Italy. The feat was both audacious and unprecedented, and it caught the Romans completely off guard. Once in Italy, Hannibal unleashed a series of devastating defeats on the Roman legions. At the Battle of Trebia, 218 BCE, and the Battle of Lake Trasimene, 217 BCE, Hannibal demonstrated his tactical genius, outmaneuvering and annihilating Roman forces. His greatest victory came in 216 BCE at the Battle of Cannae, where he employed a double envelopment tactic to surround and destroy a Roman army twice the size of his own. The loss at Cannae was catastrophic, with tens of thousands of Roman soldiers killed in a single day. Despite these crushing defeats, Rome refused to surrender. The Republic's resilience became its greatest strength. While Hannibal ravaged the Italian countryside, Rome focused on the long game, avoiding direct confrontation and slowly rebuilding its forces. The Roman general Fabius Maximus, known as the Delayer, adopted a strategy of attrition, harassing Hannibal's supply lines and avoiding open battles. Meanwhile, Rome targeted Carthage's holdings elsewhere. Under the leadership of Scipio Africanus, a brilliant and ambitious commander, Rome launched a counteroffensive in Spain, defeating Carthaginian forces and cutting off their access to resources. In 204 BCE, Scipio invaded North Africa, forcing Hannibal to return home to defend Carthage. The two armies met at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE, where Scipio's tactical innovations and superior cavalry secured a decisive Roman victory. The Second Punic War ended with Carthage's defeat and humiliation. Rome imposed harsh terms, stripping Carthage of its overseas territories, reducing its navy, and imposing crippling reparations. Rome emerged as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean, but the war had also revealed the cost of expansion. The Italian countryside lay devastated, and the social fabric of the Republic had begun to fray. Although Carthage had been weakened, its economic recovery in the decades following the Second Punic War alarmed Rome. Many Romans, particularly the influential senator Cato the Elder, viewed Carthage's resurgence as a threat. Cato famously ended every speech with the phrase, "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be destroyed. Rome provoked the Third Punic War by imposing impossible demands on Carthage, including the relocation of its entire population inland, a move that would have destroyed its economy. When Carthage refused, Rome declared war. The Third Punic War was less a contest of equals and more a calculated act of annihilation. Roman forces besieged Carthage for 3 years, systematically cutting off supplies and bombarding the city. In 146 BCE, the Romans breached Carthage's walls and destroyed the city in a brutal assault. Tens of thousands of Carthaginians were killed, and the survivors were sold into slavery. The city itself was razed to the ground, and its lands were cursed and sown with salt to ensure that it could never rise again. With Carthage destroyed, Rome became the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. The former Carthaginian territories in North Africa became a Roman province, further expanding the Republic's reach. While Rome's victories in the Punic Wars solidified its position as a superpower, the spoils of conquest brought unforeseen challenges. The influx of wealth and slaves from conquered territories widened the gap between the rich and the poor, creating deep inequalities in Roman society. The latifundia, large estates owned by wealthy aristocrats, replaced small farms as the dominant form of agriculture. These estates were worked by slaves, displacing many plebeian farmers who had once been the backbone of the Roman army. Unable to compete with the wealthy elite, these displaced farmers flocked to Rome, swelling the ranks of the urban poor and creating social unrest. Amid this growing inequality, reformers like the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, sought to address the crisis. Tiberius proposed redistributing public land to landless citizens, while Gaius introduced measures to subsidize grain and extend citizenship to Rome's Italian allies. However, these efforts met fierce resistance from the Senate, which viewed the Gracchi as threats to the established order. The brothers' attempts at reform ended in violence. Tiberius was assassinated by a mob of senators in 133 BCE, and Gaius met a similar fate a decade later. Their deaths marked a turning point in Roman politics, revealing the Republic's inability to address its internal divisions peacefully. The polarization between the elites and the masses, exacerbated by the wealth of conquest, set the stage for the political turmoil that would eventually bring down the Republic. By the end of the Punic Wars, Rome had transformed from a regional power into a sprawling empire. Its control extended from Spain in the west to Greece and Asia Minor in the east, encompassing a vast and diverse array of peoples and cultures. The Republic's ability to adapt and innovate, both on the battlefield and in governance, had been the key to its success. Yet the very forces that had driven Rome's rise also threatened its stability. The concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few, coupled with the strains of governing a vast empire, would test the Republic's resilience in the decades to come. Rome's triumph over Carthage was not the end of its struggles, but the beginning of a new and more complex phase of its history. As the Roman Republic teetered on the edge of collapse, the political and military landscape was increasingly dominated by powerful generals, whose ambitions increasingly overshadowed the traditional institutions of Rome. Among these generals, none was more ambitious or consequential than Julius Caesar. Caesar's rise began with his military conquests, most notably his campaign in Gaul, 58 to 50 BCE, where he expanded Rome's borders and accumulated vast wealth and influence. His success in Gaul made him a hero to the Roman populace, but it also alarmed the Senate, who feared that his growing power would endanger the Republic's fragile system of governance. Caesar's military prowess and popularity made him a potential threat to the established order, and his political rivals, including Pompey the Great and Crassus, initially formed an uneasy alliance with him in what became known as the First Triumvirate. However, as Caesar's power grew, so did tensions within the triumvirate. When the Senate demanded that Caesar relinquish his command and return to Rome, he found himself at a crossroads. His rivals were eager to strip him of his army and influence, but Caesar knew that without his troops, he would lose his political power. The decision he made next would change the course of Roman history. He crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, effectively declaring war on the Roman Senate and his political adversaries. According to historical accounts, Caesar famously uttered the words, "The die is cast," as he led his army across the river, an irreversible action that plunged Rome into civil war. The ensuing conflict was brutal and devastating, but Caesar's forces ultimately triumphed. After several years of fighting, he emerged as the undisputed leader of Rome, defeating his enemies and consolidating control. In 46 BCE, Caesar was appointed dictator for life, a title that granted him unprecedented power. As dictator, he enacted a series of reforms aimed at addressing the pressing issues facing Rome. These included restructuring the Roman calendar, which led to the introduction of the Julian calendar, a reform that would endure for centuries. He also implemented measures to alleviate debt and distribute land to veterans, aiming to stabilize the economy and strengthen his support base. Despite these reforms, Caesar's concentration of power alienated many members of the Senate. His actions were seen by some as a direct challenge to the Republic's core principles. The notion of a single, all-powerful ruler was anathema to those who believed in the traditional Roman system of checks and balances, and the Senate became increasingly concerned about Caesar's potential to become a tyrant. His growing autocracy and disregard for the Senate's authority deepened divisions within the ruling class. In 44 BCE, a group of senators, fearing that Caesar was aiming to become a monarch, conspired to assassinate him. On the Ides of March 15th, Caesar was stabbed to death by his closest allies, including Brutus and Cassius, in an effort to restore the power of the Senate and preserve the Republic. However, Caesar's assassination did not restore the Republic as his murderers had hoped. Instead, it triggered a new wave of instability and power struggles. Caesar's heir and adopted son, Octavian, later known as Augustus, rose to power in the chaotic aftermath. Octavian, who was only 18 at the time of Caesar's death, skillfully navigated the political landscape, forming alliances with key military leaders, including Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus, to create the Second Triumvirate. This new political alliance, however, was short-lived, and conflicts soon broke out between Octavian and Antony, who had once been allies. The struggle between Octavian and Antony culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian's forces decisively defeated Antony and his lover, Cleopatra of Egypt. With Antony and Cleopatra dead, Octavian emerged as the uncontested ruler of Rome. In 27 BCE, he offered to restore power to the Senate, but in reality, he retained control over the military and the imperial provinces. He was granted the Augustus, marking the official beginning of the Roman Empire. While Augustus preserved many of the outward forms of the Republic, such as the Senate and the magistracies, he held ultimate power. His reign marked the beginning of an era of relative peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, Roman peace, but it also signaled the permanent shift from a republic governed by elected officials to an empire ruled by an emperor. The Roman Empire, with its autocratic system, would endure for centuries, but the age of the Roman Republic was definitively over. Under the leadership of Augustus, the Roman Empire entered a golden age that would shape the trajectory of world history for centuries. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, skillfully navigated the transition from republic to empire, establishing a system of government that balanced autocratic rule with the illusion of republican institutions. This period, known as the Pax Romana, Roman peace, spanned roughly 2 centuries and brought an unprecedented era of peace, stability, and prosperity across the vast Roman world. With internal conflicts subdued and external threats minimized, the empire could focus on monumental achievements in various fields, showcasing its unparalleled power. The Pax Romana fostered a flourishing of Roman culture and infrastructure. Roman engineers built spectacular roads, bridges, and aqueducts, many of which are still in use today. The arts and literature also thrived during this time, with poets like Virgil and historians like Livy documenting the empire's grand legacy. The Roman legal system was codified and spread throughout the empire, laying the foundation for modern legal systems. Augustus also introduced significant administrative reforms, creating a more centralized government and reorganizing the military and provincial management, which helped to maintain stability and facilitate efficient governance. As the centuries progressed, emperors like Trajan and Hadrian would continue to shape the empire's destiny. Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 CE, expanded Rome's borders to their greatest extent. Under his leadership, the empire stretched from the British Isles in the west to Mesopotamia in the east, incorporating new territories like Dacia, modern-day Romania, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula. His military conquests were accompanied by vast public works projects, including the construction of the Trajan's Forum and Trajan's Market in Rome. These monumental structures highlighted the wealth and power of the empire, with the emperor himself being seen as the embodiment of Rome's imperial grandeur. Hadrian, who succeeded Trajan in 117 CE, focused more on consolidating and defending the empire's borders rather than expanding them further. One of his most lasting contributions was the construction of Hadrian's Wall in Britain, a massive defensive fortification built to protect the Roman province of Britannia from northern barbarian invasions. Hadrian's reign also saw significant cultural and architectural projects, including the rebuilding of the Pantheon in Rome, a testament to Roman engineering and artistic achievement. Despite these triumphs, cracks began to appear in the foundation of the Roman Empire. The sheer size and complexity of the empire began to strain its ability to govern effectively. As the empire expanded, communication and transportation between distant provinces became increasingly difficult, creating logistical challenges. The Roman economy also faced growing difficulties. Over-reliance on Moorish slave labor led to an inefficient agricultural system, while a growing disparity between the rich and the poor created social tensions. Additionally, the empire's wealth was largely dependent on conquest, and as military expansion slowed, so did the flow of resources. The 3rd century CE marked a particularly tumultuous period in Roman history as the empire faced a series of crises that threatened its very existence. These crises were compounded by 3 barbarian invasions along the empire's frontiers, including attacks by the Goths, Vandals, and Huns. Internal instability also plagued Rome, with political corruption, economic decline, and rapid successions of emperors, often coming to power through military coups, creating a sense of chaos and disarray. This period, known as the Crisis of the 3rd century, saw the Roman Empire nearly fracture into separate, warring regions, each ruled by different military commanders. In response to these crises, 2 emperors in particular, Diocletian and Constantine, enacted sweeping reforms that temporarily stabilized the empire. Diocletian, who ruled from 284 to 305 CE, introduced significant changes to the structure of the empire. He divided the empire into 2 halves, East and West, each ruled by a separate emperor, creating a system known as the Tetrarchy. This division was intended to make the vast empire more manageable and to address the growing pressures on the frontiers. Diocletian also enacted economic reforms, including price controls and the establishment of a new coinage system in an attempt to curb inflation. The reign of Constantine the Great, 306–337 CE, further altered the course of Roman history. Constantine's most significant contribution was his embrace of Christianity, a religion that had previously been persecuted by Roman authorities. In 313 CE, he issued the Quintic Edict of Milan, which granted religious tolerance to Christians and allowed them to practice their faith openly. Constantine himself became the first Christian emperor and played a pivotal role in shaping the future of Christianity within the empire. In addition to his religious reforms, Constantine also undertook administrative and military reforms aimed at strengthening the empire. Perhaps his most lasting legacy was the founding of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, as a new imperial capital in 330 CE. Strategically located on the border between Europe and Asia, Constantinople became the center of the Eastern Roman Empire and a thriving hub of trade, culture, and politics. This move, however, also symbolized the growing divide between the eastern and western halves of the empire. Despite these reforms, the Roman Empire's vastness continued to pose a challenge. The eastern and western halves became increasingly distinct, with the Eastern Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, thriving for centuries after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. The Western Empire, weakened by internal division, economic decline, and the pressure of relentless barbarian invasions, gradually crumbled. By the end of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire had come to an end, marking the conclusion of an era that had spanned over a millennium. While the fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of ancient Rome's dominance in the West, the legacy of the Roman Empire lived on in many ways, from its legal systems and cultural achievements to its influence on the development of modern Western civilization. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued to carry the torch of Roman heritage for nearly another 1,000 years, preserving Roman traditions, law, and governance. The story of the Roman Empire is one of incredible achievement, but also one of decline and transformation. An empire that, at its height, ruled much of the known world, but ultimately succumbed to the pressures of time and circumstance. By the end of the 4th century CE, the Roman Empire had reached the height of its territorial expansion, but the signs of decline were already visible. In 395 CE, the empire was permanently divided into two halves. The West Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital at Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, and the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome and later Ravenna, while the eastern half, or Byzantine Empire, would endure for nearly 1,000 more years. The Western Roman Empire faced mounting pressures that led to its eventual collapse in 476 CE. The division of the empire itself marked the beginning of the end for the West. The Eastern Roman Empire, under the rule of emperors such as Theodosius I, was economically stronger, more stable, and better able to defend its borders from external threats. Constantinople's strategic location made it a fortified hub for trade and military operations, allowing the Eastern Empire to thrive and maintain its influence over the Mediterranean and beyond. On the other hand, the Western Roman Empire struggled with political instability, economic hardship, and military decline, all of which weakened its ability to protect its vast territories. In the 5th century, a series of barbarian invasions devastated the Western Empire. As the empire's military power waned, various Germanic tribes, the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, began to invade Roman territories, seizing land and causing widespread chaos. The Visigoths, under the leadership of their king Alaric, famously sacked Rome in 410 CE, a shocking blow to the pride of the Roman Empire. This was the first time in nearly 800 years that Rome had been invaded by a foreign enemy, and it sent shockwaves throughout the empire. Although the Visigoths eventually withdrew, the damage to Rome's reputation and stability was done. The Vandals followed suit in 455 CE under the leadership of their king Genseric. They too breached Rome's defenses, and they plundered the city, further undermining its power and prestige. These successive sackings demonstrated the empire's inability to defend its most iconic city and symbolized the crumbling authority of the Western Roman Empire. By the mid-5th century, Rome's once formidable legions were being overrun by a mix of internal decay, economic decline, and the influx of barbarian groups seeking land and power within the empire's borders. The political instability within the Western Roman Empire was equally concerning. The imperial throne was frequently contested, with a succession of emperors rising to power only to be overthrown or assassinated within short periods. The government had become increasingly corrupt, and the Senate had lost much of its power and influence. As the western provinces of the empire began to fragment, the central authority of Rome weakened, and local military leaders often took matters into their own hands. The empire was no longer united under a strong, centralized rule, and its leadership was often incapable of responding to the growing external threats. The final blow to the Western Roman Empire came in 476 CE, when the last Roman emperor Romulus Augustulus was deposed by the barbarian leader Odoacer. Romulus Augustulus, a young and largely ineffective ruler, was not taken seriously by the military and political elites of the empire. Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain who had served in the Roman army, took advantage of the situation and declared himself king of Italy, effectively ending the Western Roman Empire. Romulus Augustulus's deposition is often marked as the official fall of the Western Roman Empire, signaling the end of a centuries-long era that had seen Rome rise from a small city-state to dominate much of the known world. However, while the Western Roman Empire had officially fallen, its legacy did not vanish with the deposition of its last emperor. The Catholic Church, which had grown in power and influence throughout the empire, became one of the central institutions in Europe during the Middle Ages. The Church's leadership, particularly that of the Pope, helped maintain a semblance of unity and continuity after the empire's collapse. Roman law, too, left a lasting imprint on the governance of medieval European kingdoms, and many of the legal principles that had been developed under the empire were later adopted by emerging European monarchies. The Byzantine Empire, which had been a continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire, also played a crucial role in preserving the Roman legacy. Even after the fall of Rome, the Byzantines continued to uphold Roman traditions in governance, law, and culture, particularly in the East. The Byzantines saw themselves as the rightful heirs of the Roman Empire, and for centuries Constantinople remained a center of power, culture, and religion. Rome's story is one of unparalleled ambition, resilience, and influence, a city that rose from myth to conquer the known world. The Roman Empire's achievements in law, governance, engineering, and culture laid the foundations for much of the Western world as we know it today. The echoes of Rome's power are still felt in modern legal systems, architectural design, and political structures. Despite the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the idea of Rome and its contributions to civilization lived on, influencing the development of subsequent empires, nation-states, and cultures for centuries. Ultimately, the fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a sudden collapse, but a prolonged process of decline marked by internal and external challenges. While the loss of the West's imperial power was a devastating event, the empire's legacy continued to shape the future of Europe and the broader world for generations to come. The story of Rome is one of incredible rise and decline, a civilization that reached the pinnacle of human achievement, only to fall prey to the forces of time, internal decay, and external pressures, but leaving an indelible mark on history. The story of Rome is not just a tale of an empire, it's a reflection of human ambition, resilience, and the challenges of maintaining power. From its humble beginnings as a small city-state on the Tiber River, Rome rose to dominate much of the known world, shaping cultures, governance, and civilizations for centuries. Even as the Western Roman Empire fell, its legacy endured, influencing everything from law and engineering to art, religion, and political systems. The fall of Rome is a sobering reminder that even the greatest powers can falter when faced with internal divisions, corruption, and external threats. But it's also a testament to the enduring strength of ideas. Rome's contributions to the world didn't vanish with its empire. They live on in our legal systems, our architecture, and even in the languages we speak. This incredible story of rise and fall teaches us about the complexity of history. It's not just about dates and events. It's about people, decisions, and the forces that shape civilizations. And in that, we can see echoes of our own world. What parallels do you see between Rome's story and the challenges we face today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this journey through history, take a moment to support our channel by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing. It's a small gesture that helps us create more content like this and share it with even more history enthusiasts. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll never miss our next deep dive into history. And if you're hungry for more, check out our playlist of ancient history or our deep dive into the Byzantine Empire, where Rome's legacy continued to thrive for centuries after the fall of the West. Thank you for watching and for being part of this journey to uncover the stories of our past. Together, we're keeping history alive. We'll see you in the next video.